This is the RoR Live Series, episode number 9. Today we're talking about innovation and consistency with the great Scott Rao. Well, hey everybody, this is Chris DeFurio with Keys to the Shop, and welcome to another episode in the series RoR Live, taking the RoR roasting-focused episodes that we do here at Keys to the Shop in partnership with Roast Magazine, and bringing the show on the road to the SCA Expo in this past April in Boston. And like I mentioned, these conversations are done in partnership with Roast Magazine, which is one of the longest running and most respected trade journals in the coffee industry, featuring insights and practical applications from scientists, subject matter experts, and professionals from around the world on the craft and science of roasting and the business of roasting. It is an indispensable resource that you need to be subscribed to at roastmagazine.com. And you can get $5 off your subscription by using the code ROR when you subscribe to Roast Magazine. And be sure to check out their audio articles as well over at roastmagazine.com/audio articles. That's where they take previously published articles from Roast Magazine and then read them aloud so you can enjoy the content on the go. So if you're a roaster and you are looking to resource yourself and your team with the best and most up-to-date knowledge in coffee roasting, you need to be subscribed to Roast Magazine. Again, check them out over at roastmagazine.com. Now, today is number 9 in the series of conversations we've been having at RoR Live, and we're getting to talk with one of our industry's luminaries, Scott Rao. Scott Rao has been in the coffee industry for over 25 years as a cafe owner, roaster, consultant, and author. He has written the Coffee Roaster's Companion, Coffee Roasting Best Practices, and his consultancy is sought after the world over. Scott's popular Instagram account, at Where is Scott Rao, offers expert-level tips and discussions around coffee brewing and roasting. I've known Scott for quite a long time, and he's actually been a guest on the show previously at Keys to the Shop, and I'll link to that in the show notes. But in today's conversation, we got to sit down with Scott live at the SCA Expo to talk about roasting technology and innovations and consistency and kind of balancing the two. We talk about how to control outcomes via brewing methods and technology, working with what we have, what are the best practices for achieving consistency, and how do we choose what technology and innovations to adopt in our programs and roasting while still achieving consistent, excellent coffee. There's a lot to talk about here, especially around the conversation of technology versus the by hand and artisan approach. And, any conversation you have with Scott Rao is going to leave you with a lot more knowledge on this subject than you started with. So let's get right to it. Here now is my conversation on the show floor of the SCA in Boston with Scott Rao. Scott Rao of Scott Rao fame. I feel like you've always just been like Scott Rao, the infamous coffee expert, brewing expert, experimenter, scientist. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Chris. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Face-to-face, it's been quite a bit.
Yeah.
We've talked on the show before, but the last time I saw you face-to-face was at Carriage House Coffee, or Cafe, I think.
No, come on, really?
Yeah, way back in Ithaca.
Wow, I like that place. That was really pretty.
It is a great place. Yeah.
Oh, it's still there. Good.
It's still there. New ownership, but yeah, it's really fantastic. So, there's so many things we could talk about here, and that's the challenge of talking to someone like yourself. So we're narrowing it down to innovation in a sense. So I guess my first question about this is talking about roaster innovation. And in a show like this, there's all sorts of advanced equipment, more so than ever before. What are the most promising things that you've seen coming about in roasting recently? According to what you know about what produces great coffee, what are the most promising advances we have?
Okay, just in terms of roasting?
Yeah, in roasting.
So where we're at right now is the integration of hardware and software has really helped people roast much more consistently and get better feedback about what they're doing. Back in the day, like back when we met, you could use the same inputs every roast. You could say, okay, I'm going to use these gas settings, I'm going to use this airflow, but you didn't really have a way to track the output. And of course you had sensory, but the truth was what we didn't know then was using the same inputs every time didn't give you the same output every time. Sort of like if you pull shots on bar all day long and you just know the shot time, but you don't necessarily realize, like, oh, there was some channeling here, or maybe the weather changed and I need a little grind change or something like that. And we didn't have the feedback to know that those were issues in roasting. And so then Cropster came along, and we're data logging, and that really gave us feedback now where it's like, oh, I see that the same inputs every time are giving me slightly different outputs every time for a variety of reasons. And now fast forward, another 10 years since Cropster came out with the rate of rise curve. Now we've got much better integration of hardware and software. You've got technology like the luring or machines like the IMF that are recirculating hot air and using one burner to double as the afterburner and the source of heat for the roaster so that it's more fuel efficient, and it's also creating a more stable environment. And that's sort of the state of the art now. And where this is going, hopefully, is people focusing more now on getting more convection and less conduction. So an air roaster, like a Civit's fluid bed roaster from back when, or a machine like the luring, is primarily a convection machine. A machine like a Probot is arguably about 70% convection, 30% conduction. So convection is the heat transfer through the air or through a gas. Conduction is heat transfer through direct surface contact. And conduction makes coffee a little heavier in body, but a little bit murkier in flavor. Convection tends to make a little bit prettier, cleaner coffee. And so now there's finally a recognition through the luring and machines like that maybe convection is what we need to make beautiful, lightly roasted coffee with as much clarity as possible. So there's a move now to create more convection machines, and really the next step is just better control. Like luring has a very sophisticated automation system. Air roasters can have that. Drum roasters kind of can't for a variety of reasons. The heavy drum is kind of resistant to fine-tuned control. And now there's more machines that are getting on board with, hey, lots of convection, no heavy hot drum, and it's making roasters more agile, and it's making the software more effective at controlling the roaster.
So the industry seems to be going in the direction where I know you focus on the prettier, cleaner coffees, right? But then there's also this industry trend of embracing coffees that have those characteristics of heaviness and body and favoring body and like espresso, like a lot of third wave shops that I know, and I get these espresso blends myself at home. Is the heavier qualities that we used to disparage. And so in these new advances in technology, are you sacrificing any of those things with this added convection?
Yeah, that's a great question. You are, in the sense that there's you're always making some trade-off when you make any decision in coffee, right? If you brew with a French press, you'll get more body and you'll lose clarity, right? And then you brew with a Chemex, you get more clarity, you lose body, but you can't have 10 out of 10 in both, right? And in roasting, there's a similar trade-off. I think the good news is that if you go pure convection, you will lose a little body, but roasting is not the optimal place to adjust body in coffee. You can adjust body by, for instance, using a filter that's more porous when you do a drip brew. You can technically increase body a bit by just making your coffee a little stronger, because there's more solids, there's more undissolved things per unit, per milliliter, that kind of thing. And roasting is, and of course you can change the roast degree. You could just roast a little bit darker. I'd probably prefer a pure convection roast a couple degrees darker than a mixed convection conduction roast a couple degrees lighter. The body will be the same, but the flavor will be a little clearer in the convection roast. So there's always a trade-off, but I think the good news is that roasting isn't the best way to control body, so it's not a hard trade-off to make.
Okay, and do you feel like that is the place where people have been trying historically to add body?
I think it's one of the places, but I think it's a bit of a misplaced decision. It's really brewing is the primary place people should be focusing on to manipulate body, because it's a magnitude more effective at it, and also you don't have as much of a trade-off with brewing when you increase body as you do with roasting in terms of flavor.
Okay, so the things that you're affecting in roasting might be slightly different than the things you can affect in brewing.
Sure.
And so how does the feedback loop work? Because now, on top of the advances that we have in roasting, we have things like the decent espresso machine, which I know you're intimately involved with, and other technology from just major manufacturers. This is a golden age of extraction. I wish I had this.
Yeah, totally.
I was working on the old 1972 Faima back in the day.
Back when you're okay, I'll go Corsair, yeah.
It's so... the question is, how has extraction technology advancements, how has that sort of signaled to roasters to advance what they do. Like that, there's a feedback loop there that says, we're tasting these things, let's change the roast. But then you're saying, well, you should just change the way you're brewing and not necessarily change the roast. But you have to have both, don't you?
It is. You do, and it's very messy.
Okay.
Because I'll give you. I think this is the best example of where this gets a little bit circular and messy. Is there's always this debate about what's called omni roasting and roasting. Like, should you just have one roast for all brewing styles, or should have an espresso roast and a filter roast? And people ask me this 100 times a year, and by the way, that doesn't make it one of the top 10 questions, you know. But my answer is never. It's never what they want. They want, like, pick one, right? But that's not the answer. I said it really depends on how you're brewing the coffee. So if you're brewing on a La Marzocco PB without pre-infusion or real pre-infusion, and you're using an old Mazzer grinder, you're going to get a pretty low extraction with perhaps a sharper flavor profile, and you probably need a roast that's sort of adjusted for that to tone down the sharpness, etc., relative to the roast you would use for a filter coffee. But then when I use something like the Decent, I am doing a very long pre-infusion, I'm manipulating pressure, I'm softening the flavors, I'm doing a better job of getting the whole puck to extract higher and at a higher temperature, etc. And then in the end, the quality and flavor of my extraction through espresso is more similar to that of my filter brew. So the necessity of roasting them differently, the difference becomes so small. I'll just use one roast for both.
Okay. Now you're Scott Rayo, and you have this kind of mind that controls all of these inputs and outputs. However, most of us have, I think, in the commercial sense, the equipment that we have, and we don't necessarily say all the time, like, there's this formula you just gave of if you have this type of grinder and this type of machine, then you should have this combination. It's hard for us to do that because we bought a roaster separately from buying an espresso machine, so we don't know the pipeline until we're experimenting with things. How do people arrive at those kinds of feedbacks?
I think the first thing I want to say about it is that in no way am I saying just because I omni roast that it's appropriate for your situation, right? Because it has to be context, it has to meet your goals, and it has to match your equipment, right? I care about you optimizing your equipment, not mimicking what someone is doing with some other equipment. And if you've got a Mythos and a flat 9-bar espresso machine and you're running a good cafe, maybe you shouldn't omni roast. Maybe for you it's a little bit of a different formula, and that's okay. So that's why I never answer like yes omni roast, no don't omni roast, because it's not a
depends, right?
Yeah. And now I've lost the question. I'm so sorry.
Well, the question was basically like if I wanted to optimize my setup, as I have the roaster I have the espresso machine I have, I'm not going to optimize it by getting new ones.
Right.
How do I get to the point where I've adjusted my recipes in roasting and in brewing so that all are working together well?
I think the best way I could answer it is there are upstream and downstream factors, right? Like the green you buy is perhaps the highest upstream factor, and then how you roast it, and then how you grind it, and then how you brew it. Something downstream probably shouldn't be impacting what you do upstream, and if it is, maybe something's backwards. In other words, you wouldn't necessarily buy a different green because you're having a roasting problem. You still want to buy the best green possible, and then say, okay, what's the best way to roast this green? Okay, and now you've got this roasted coffee, and then the next question is, what's the best grinder or maybe grind setting for that coffee and this brewing that I'm merging here. And so I often, when I have clients who are adjusting something upstream, I'm a little bit worried sometimes. I'm like, okay, I think there's something we have to address in the downstream thing that's getting in the way, because they're a little bit like, if you have a roast and you cup it and you say, okay, that was beautiful, and then you make a batch brew of it, and you say, oh, okay, that coffee was a little bit more bitter and astringent than I wanted, you wouldn't go back and fix the roast. And I've had a lot of clients do that. I'm like, no, the cupping proved that the roast was good, that you got to work on your brewing. And it's very rare that the roast was like, I mean, you're obviously doing the best you can with the roast, but if there's a problem with the brewing, probably you need to look at the brewing. If you go upstream, you have to really be sure that the upstream is where the problem is.
And a lot of us don't take the time to examine the downstream things enough.
Yeah, or maybe not even think about upstream, downstream. Like it's more like, I have a problem, I'm going to fix the thing that seems most obvious, but it's not always It's not always the obvious thing that's the cause.
Yeah, in terms of the cupping telling the truth and the brewing giving you a different story, there's also the commercial, the baristas who are making the coffee every single day that's different even than what the roaster has, the machine in their lab. It just is different as well.
That's true. I mean, I'd prefer to not see roasters adjust what they're doing because, let's say, baristas are inexperienced or using bad puck prep. I mean, obviously, if that's reality and you have no choice, fine. But usually the better answer is, okay, work on the downstream thing because it's, we don't want to start changing upstream. We start chasing our tail.
Yeah. Okay, so coming back to advancements in technology with espresso machines and specifically in roasting too, how do we balance experimenting with new technologies that might give us a learning curve that means our customers experience a hiccup in the consistency? Because consistency is king in terms of maintaining a business. What's the appropriate amount of experimentation that somebody should embrace when they see all these shiny new technologies? It's nice to...
It's a great question. I mean, on the industry level, it's just great if everyone experiments because eventually we'll benefit, right? It's a little bit like all of these crazy fermentations, right? A lot of them are not successes, right? But the fact that someone did that, we're all learning from it and we're all benefiting from it. So it's sort of like on a species versus individual level, like to some degree, like evolution cares about the species benefiting, like we care about the industry benefiting, and there's just sacrifices along the way, right? So how much experimentation you should do, like I think on a certain level, it should be based on your fundamental knowledge and skills. I have a lot of clients who start roasting and literally on day 2 they're actually experimenting, and I don't mean finding their way. I mean they're like, oh, I heard about this idea, I'm going to try this. I heard about that, and I'm like, really, it would be great if you focused on some fundamentals for a while. Don't worry about new ideas. Just feel grounded before you start experimenting. Right now, so I feel like if I walk up to Matt Perger or James Hoffman or someone who's established themselves and knows what they're doing and has good theoretical knowledge, like they should experiment with as much range as they want, right? Because they're not going to lose their center, they're not going to lose their fundamentals.
So the center that you want your clients to have if you're having that conversation, what is that?
So the center is, to me, like the first principles or the fundamentals. Like, if you're brewing, like, are you getting an even extraction and are you doing it consistently? In roasting, are you getting good development and not having defects like baking or underdevelopment or undue roastiness, right? Like if you feel like you're grounded in a system that can accomplish those things and you've got those basics down, then I think you can kind of flex and experiment a lot. But I think if you're still struggling with consistency or any of those defects, something, you should be very cautious and you should still experiment, but you should sort of don't stray too far from the trail in the woods. Like, I have a bad sense of direction, right? If I stray from the main trail, I will never get home, right? And it's a little bit like that. Like, if you're really confident you can get back on track, go for it. But if you're not really ready to do an experiment and know that you remember where center is or where like the fundamentals are, then maybe you should be careful.
It's a lay of the land.
Yeah.
Literally in the walking case.
Yes.
It's so the consequence of not knowing the lay of the land and straying off of center is the idea of your business losing people who rely on you being consistent and would forgive experimentation. Okay,
so I didn't answer your last question well because I realized you're talking more about the commercial environment, and I think most of the experimentation, as much as possible, should happen in the back. Or like in the case of when I had a cafe when I'm in my 20s and I was crazy, I would literally experiment at 1 a.m. after I closed the shop, right? But it should be on the side. You shouldn't experiment on your customers until you've got something you think, okay, this is different. Maybe I want to test it on some customers and who I know I'm not going to lose, and I know they're interested in learning and trying new things. But I don't think you should be just throwing out your Curtis or Fetco to get some like newfangled batch brewer just because it sounds cool, and then just using it on your customers, and then maybe they're finding out, oh, that wasn't a good idea. Like that's yeah. So to some degree, I feel like as much as possible, experiment behind closed doors, sort of, and roll it out when you feel comfortable.
And yet, so we are afraid of being passed by technology, and we think like, here's the question I really want to ask here is any kind of roasting equipment fine to learn the fundamentals on?
The vast majority, yes.
Okay.
Like 80%, sure, absolutely.
Okay, so you can't just like say, well, I need to learn the fundamentals, but I need to get like upgraded technology and newfangled things in order to start off the right foot, and that's how I'm going to learn the fundamentals.
I think you're pretty safe as long as you're not buying, say, a brand new machine that just came out this year or something like that. If you're buying something with a decent reputation and you talk to a few professionals who are using it and you trust and they say, yeah, I like it or whatever, then go for it, right? And
reputation, like they're not constantly breaking down,
or there's not some common complaint everyone has that sounds like a deal breaker, like that kind of thing.
Oh, right,
sure.
Yeah. So now I want to drive into consistency a little bit here while we're talking about experimentation and ask you if you could like wave a wand and make all roasters do one or two things that would actually contribute the most to them being consistent, even in the things that they're doing that may be experimental, but would lead to more consistency, what would it be?
That's a really easy one, actually. It's a surprising one to people, especially when they're new at roasting, but there's something called a between batch protocol. It's what you do during the time between batches. Now, traditionally, way back when, people saw between batches as a time. It's like, oh, I need to use the bathroom, I need to make a phone call, I need to weigh a batch, I'll just do that between batches. But really, that time between batches is precious in terms of carefully resetting what we call the thermal energy of the machine. So that when the next batch begins, you are starting with an identical machine in terms of the drum temperature and perhaps any other properties of the machine. If you can do that successfully, then when you go and put those same inputs in on the next batch, it'll be the same outcome as the previous batch, right? And if you do a between batch protocol well, you can roast 10, 20 batches in a row of the same coffee and have like identical curves that are like just tracing each other perfectly, and then the flavor will presumably be identical as well. That's been neglected until the last couple of years. Like a couple of years ago, I really started pushing this idea of between batch protocol. I even called up Cropster and said, look, I really want you to allow us to show optionally a between batch protocol curve. So we're going to actually graph what the machine is doing between batches. And now you can look at your Cropster curves with, on the left side, you see the curve between batches and then a continuous curve going to the next batch. So now instead of just seeing the discrete batches, you're seeing the in-betweens also. And when you trace the in-betweens, you're actually, if you do it with a decent system, you're actually resetting the machine's thermal energy. That was the huge X factor that was missing in people's roasting that was preventing them from being consistent.
Oh yeah, so is that coming?
It's happened. Cropster has it, which was much. I mean, me yelling about it got a couple hundred people on board. Cropster making it a feature got tens of thousands of people saying like, oh, I guess I'll use this thing, and then, oh, that's really important, and then now it's accepted.
One of those deal breakers you're talking about in advancement of technology and in adopting technology is what I hear you saying. You haven't said it outright, but Cropster is listening to you. And there's a lot of and then they implement something. A lot of people are giving good feedback to that, and it makes me want to ask, like, how do we differentiate between the technology that is going to be flexible enough to receive feedback? It's new and it needs our feedback, but some people just don't want it, and
it's always going to happen.
Yeah.
Look, and that's okay. It works, makes the world go round. And if it wasn't for acceptance of dissent, then we wouldn't have new ideas, right? And nothing would evolve. So it's cool that there's always going to be maybe 10-20% of people who are not okay with the new change. And there's some validity, like when people are railing against tech and saying, but what about the artisan side? It's like, well, I think in the long run, the artisan side will just keep shrinking because tech, whatever we can do intuitively, someone smart will figure out how to do it with tech. But it's good that we don't just forget about the artisan side, because maybe, I've had some people who follow my work who got so obsessed with data that they literally just stopped tasting coffee, right? And that's a little bit extreme. Or they'll come to me and they'll present a curve and they want to talk about it, but I'm like, okay, so how did it taste and how did it taste compared to what you want? They're like, oh, I didn't taste it, or oh, that's important, and so I don't want that to happen. I don't want to be responsible for people forgetting about tasting blindly and comparing carefully and doing all that, but it does happen.
That's interesting, and that's an extreme, right? There's an extreme, the person who roasts in the woods using only wood and whatever it is they're doing, and somebody that they don't taste coffee anymore, right?
And they're the same. They're the extreme left and the extreme right of coffee, right? rigid in their own way or whatever. And so there's always going to be a spectrum.
There's an interesting dichotomy here. Two opposing things happening in coffee. There's the rise of technology that removes the artisan element a bit, right? But then there's the rise in the story and the human element of coffee itself, and the social element of coffee, which I imagine would bleed over into roasting and make people want to, make a renaissance of artisan roasted coffee, because that's just it's a heart-focused approach to it, and they think we should do that with everything, including our technology and our roasting.
So I think there's a middle way. I think there's a happy medium there, where for a long time baristas would often say to me things like, that technology, it's ruining the artisan side of coffee, blah, blah, blah. And to some degree, I think they felt a little defensive, like maybe that their job would be, taken over by tech or something like that. But really what's happened during the rise of more and more technology in coffee, the pay rate and the demand for good, say, baristas or roasters was going up tremendously. Okay, not tremendous, but at a good percentage rate, right? And the status of the barista is much greater now than it was 20 years ago.
True.
Okay, and so how did those two things happen at the same time? And my belief is that what technology has done is not replaced us, but let's face it, there's certain jobs that technology does better than humans. And if we can identify those jobs and say, maybe a human shouldn't do that job, we'll just give it to technology, it frees up the human to maybe do something a little bit higher up the scale in terms of like maybe using your brain more and your body less, right? So now there's people who are, sure, we're using software, but now there's much more analysis going on. Right, and there's people writing the software, there's people figuring out how to use the software, there's people using the software to analyze, and we're doing less physical work and more intellectual work, and I think most people should be happy about that. And likewise, the barista is maybe not as, I think when you and I started in the 90s and such, we were doing a lot of multitasking, a lot of moving around quickly, and a lot of things were happening. I mean, you were doing much better latte art than I was. I know that, but we were, and now there's actually, I think, a lot more intentional action being taken in coffee, and part of that is because to some degree technology has kind of freed us or helped us with feedback and tracking what's going on, so that we're now more in a position of like realizing that if we just carefully make good decisions about how the process is going to go, the tech's going to take care of the rest, and the end result is better coffee, and we're using our brains, not our bodies, and that's a good thing.
So it's less likely now to run away with us because we do have we have the freedom to make those intentional decisions, and therefore we're a little bit more sober-minded about the things that we do or don't adopt. Even if we do like swing in the direction of saying like we miss the artisan way, so we're just going to do this manually. It's not as much as it would have been if the technology didn't exist. There's always going to be those people on the extremes, right?
Yes.
Not as many, thanks to the consistency that technology has provided us. Okay.
Yeah. And I want to say, like, the elephant in the room here is that hopefully most people in this room, our goal is to make better coffee. And even the anti-technologists have to admit that there's a lot of things technology does better than humans, and if we want the best possible coffee, we have to make use of it. I mean, let's face it, we use temperature probes. It's a form of technology. Humans can't measure temperature with their finger in the drum, right, or something like that. So
speak for yourself, Scott.
I mean, hey, if you can do that, that's great. But there's so many things that we already, but because they're established technologies, we don't think of them that way. We don't feel threatened by them. We just like, oh, that's cool. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
So we're all secret Luddites.
Yes.
In a sense.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah, and it's right. You're right. We're here to make better coffee and to represent coffee well, and that's also what technology has allowed us to do. So the farmer's coffee is seen in the best possible light. Yeah. Scott, it's been wonderful to talk to you.
Been a pleasure.
And always recommend people listen to what you have to say. You're a wealth of knowledge, and it's just great to get to see you face to face.
Thank you, Chris. So nice to see you.
Okay, everyone. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation. Scott makes such a great point about the role that technology plays to allow us to pursue other artisan things and just to produce a better coffee in the end. And it's all in how you approach using these tools. And I think clarity of what you're seeking in terms of outcome is one of the main ingredients in using these things well and achieving consistency in your roasted coffee. So a huge thank you to Scott Rayo for sitting down with me over at Expo. Don't forget that you can watch the video of Scott and I having this conversation live on the show floor by going to roastmagazine.com and searching their videos. Now, if you want to learn more about what Scott does with consulting and his work in coffee, go visit him over at scottrayo.com. And of course, his Instagram account, where is Scott Rayo. Now, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback for me about today's episode or any other episode of Keys to the Shop, feel free to send me an email, chris@keystotheshop.com. And with that, that is the end of the episode. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining me. Be sure to subscribe to Roast Magazine. Have a wonderful day. And as always, I hope that this conversation has truly given you keys to the shop.